So our agenda for today, we're going to talk a little bit about how stress and anxiety works, its purpose, and then we'll talk a little bit about, how do we develop some awareness so that we're understanding the sources of our anxiety, and then think about, okay, great, we know it's a problem, it's a thing that's happening, we know why it's happening, how do I manage it? We'll dig into some strategies for that, and then really thinking about, what's your toolkit, what's maybe a couple strategies that you want to start bringing into your toolkit. What do you think all of these people have in common?
Same number of connections from, the joke would be much funnier if I could remember his name. Footloose guy, Kevin Bacon.
I don't know if David Beckham falls into that, but it could be something for sure. Highly productive. Okay, yeah. What else?
I'm not saying they're all actors or like they're famous, but they're famous because they're singers, they're songwriters, they're actors. They're always out in anxiety-producing spaces.
They're one, they're like famous people for just in general, but two, they're also very successful, right? So that kind of goes along with the highly productive. The symmetric faces is a funny comment. I think that's funny as well. That tends to go with, fame a little bit. They have some form of stage fright. Yeah, all of these people have been recorded as explaining that they experience anxiety, and at times it can debilitate them. So like about the 12-month prevalence for any anxiety disorder is over 12%. So that's 1 in 8 Canadians currently, and that's only the people who actually get diagnosed. And then 1 in 4 Canadians will have at least one anxiety disorder in their lifetime. So once again, this doesn't capture all the people who don't get diagnosed, but are definitely experiencing these. So it's definitely common. Yes, Meryl Streep too. She's definitely up there. And athletes are speaking a lot about their mental health as well as it relates to their success and their performance. So this is really becoming a common topic of discussion in our society these days. Everybody's human. Everybody navigates these aspects of human experience. So I got a little bit of a warm up for us, and I like to call this activity Stressed Out Sam. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to toss you into breakout groups, and one person is going to be the illustrator, I guess. So you'll open up the whiteboard, draw a stick person, and then as a group, talking about what does anxiety look like? How can you tell this person's stressed out? This person's anxious? What do they look like? What's that experience? Okay, and then we'll come on back together and we'll talk through each person's kind of example. So whoever the illustrator is, you'll be responsible for that share screen. There should be a green little button, hit share screen. Whiteboard is one of the options. Everybody should be able to see it in your group. And once we do the 1-minute warning that we're going to close it, make sure that you save it. Okay, so it'll give you like a little toolbar of like draw or sketch or paint or whatever. The last one is save. So just make sure you save that image because we're gonna share it once you come back. All right, so let's kind of present each one of our images. So room 1, which was Morgan, William, and you. Does one of you want to share your picture and just walk us through the features of it? What you added to it and why?
So some of the things that were mentioned, he might have his arms behind his back, nervousness. He might be getting red or sweaty or teary, avoiding eye contact. His thoughts and or words might be either, sort of coming out in a jumble a lot at once, or might sort of go to nothing, represented as the null set. His stomach might feel rumbly. He might feel overwhelmed by sensory input. He might do rapid breathing and might sort of tap his foot. Those are some examples. And if he's doing all of them, that'd be quite a lot.
Yeah, oftentimes all these things do come in a big wave. So this is a great example. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
So let's go to group 2 here, which was our group here.
So Sam is stressed and he's sweating all over the place and he's shaking, and he has tried to pull out his hairs, And one of the features which I think many will agree is one thing which makes me stressed is kind of trying to multitask. So kind of trying to do this on his laptop, tablet, and phone all at once. I couldn't really draw the apple, and it looks more like a heart now.
If I may, Sartek, Sam looks happy. Is this the face that he's putting on to show that he's not stressed, he's high performing, or is there anything else I should be reading into this smile?
And that's the hidden picture. That Sam is trying to hide what he's going through.
Perhaps he's wincing.
Yeah, the eyes are also something we added. Eyes are widened and stressed, so trying to focus on everything at once.
Yeah. We talked about biting fingernails too, but we weren't quite sure how to draw that. But that's something too.
Yes. I forgot about that.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing.
Okay.
And group 3 here.
All right, so first off, I've never used the whiteboard before, so I didn't know how to change out of green until very late in our process. And we learned that there are a lot of effects of anxiety. So if anyone else in the group wants to chime in, if I miss one, feel free to do so, but I'll just list sort of from top to bottom. So of course, you can start sweating on your forehead. You could potentially just tell someone that you're anxious. People do that all the time. It doesn't always get the greatest response, but it should. One's eyes might become dilated or an infinite stare. Your mouth, which I tried to draw sort of like a straight line mouth, is you could like sort of lock your jaw and tense up. But also, alternatively, you could start hyperventilating, and that's what this brown bag is. The hair on the back of your neck might stand up. Your hands could become sweaty. Your heart rate could increase. You can get butterflies in your stomach, and your knees could shake and go weak. So I think that's what we managed to get through. I see a thumbs up, so I think I got them. That was our list of physiological effects.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
No problem.
Cool. I really like doing this as a bit of an intro, because sometimes it's like, yeah, what does it really look like? How do I even notice when I am anxious, right? Like these are all really, really important details about ourselves, and everybody presents differently, right? Like each of those images was a little bit different, and how signs of nervousness shows up is definitely different for each person. So our strategies should also be kind of unique to those as well. Let's dig into a couple of things here. So yeah, there's definitely physical things that we experience, the sweating. Some people might get headaches, they have muscle tension. Something I think is really, really interesting to pay attention for yourself, and you'll get more awareness with this over time, is where in your body do you hold tension? Is it in your jaw? Is it in your neck? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in your hands, in your feet, in your toes? What starts moving? What tenses up, right? And that might be, you might even want to just relax or move those muscles around. That's another thing to think about. Could be emotional aspects. So, you're feeling things on the inside. It's more of an internal experience. It doesn't necessarily exist on the outside, but you very much experience it internally, right? So sometimes we're really good at hiding these things. Sometimes they do definitely show up physiologically. And then cognitive too. So what are you saying to yourself? What are you picturing? What are you imagining? What's the currency of kind of your cognitive behavior as well? Are you ruminating? Are you hyper-focused on something? Yeah. And the reason, so I like to be really intentional with putting emotional in the middle, because emotional tends to be something that it moves a little bit slower. right? So like physical and cognitive would move like waters, like water on a stream. Emotional tends to be a little bit thicker, so more like molasses or like honey, where it moves slower and things take longer to change, takes longer for your current situation to become embedded in it. So emotional is a little bit more slower, but it's very much just as vivid. Okay, so this is Lisa introducing a student, graduating soon from history, and she's had 2 horrible interviews lately, and now she's super nervous, super panicked. And whenever she gets ready or she's about to go into an interview, her heart pounds, she blushes, gets super scared, focused on what all her failures and mistakes in the past, and afraid of getting that we don't want to hire you message again, right? So some common kind of career contexts where this pop up, networking, interviews. Those are the 2 big ones, but they're also 2 like super essential things that happen all the time. Could even just be like an information interview, connecting with someone for a coffee chat or something too, right? But it's definitely something we have to navigate. I find especially with interviews, it tends to be strong. Myself included, I definitely battle with some of these things. So there can be lots of different factors that trigger it, right? We're very dynamic people navigating a lot of different things. So thinking about how these factors are kind of involved in your current experience, current moment, right? So you got personal things going on, whether it's financial struggles, maybe you got a lot of pressure to get a job so you can pay bills. Maybe you got pressure from parents or spouses or family, friends, whatever it may be. Could be task related things. I got a due date tonight. I got to make sure I fulfill. Contextual things. There could be loud music in the foyer where you're waiting, and that could cause anxiety. Might be normal in their like space and in their culture, but for what you need and where you're at right now, that loud music isn't helping. So sometimes there's contextual things. And then even just like genetic developmental things too. So how we've developed into who we are. And we develop a lot of habits and routines that help us to survive and deal with a lot of different problems. And sometimes those are super helpful and they've allowed us to accomplish what we've accomplished so far, but sometimes they can get a little bit outdated and they aren't helping you in your current situation. So sometimes we got to kind of rewrite what we call like scripts of just like behaviors, whether it's cognitive or physical or emotional. Okay, so where did this come from? Well, we get anxious because thinking about just natural selection and humans evolving, freeze, fight, flight. Anytime there was a lion around the corner or a bear or something, we needed something that told us, hey, we got to get out of here, or we got to deal with this problem right now. So really oftentimes what it's telling us is something is important. Something you are experiencing right now, you're seeing, you're learning about, something you're involved with right now is concerning. It demands a high amount of attention. Okay. Nowadays, we don't really come across bears as often, so our threats can seem like bears, even though it's an interview or something a little bit smaller. Or like Ace Ventura here, we forgot to brush her hair. Okay. I think it's helpful to think about that animal instinct too, because there is always a purpose. There's a value behind why we experience this. And I think that's a helpful reframe for even thinking about our relationship with the anxiety. So this is jumping into a little bit more performance stuff. I think it's really helpful to understand what is the optimal level of arousal for you. So that's kind of what that chart is showing. So what it demonstrates is really, depending on the task, but our performance or ability to complete a task is not good when we're under aroused. So we're not excited enough, we're lethargic, we're kind of lazy. And it goes up until a certain point. So when we have energy, we're maybe moving, we're walking around, we're talking, and then it drops off and we get too anxious. So like we're really frantic, our head's moving really, really fast, can't focus on much. That actually impacts our performance and ability to accomplish something. So what we want to develop is an awareness about where's that optimal level. And sometimes the anxiety is actually helping us get to that level, but we do want to be aware of when is it hijacking it and it's starting to decrease because it's too busy or it's too loud. And the other thing I like to talk about too is cue utilization theory. So a lot of this is based off of attention as well. So depending on what the task is, so if it's something like, I don't know, I'm used to sport examples. So let's say, football, you got people who are running really, really fast or really, really hard for like 5 seconds. They don't have to focus on 10 things. They're focusing on one thing, and it's explode, move really fast. So they don't need a lot of intention. So their intensity can be really high. But something like an interview, we've got to think about a lot of things, right? Our working memory tends to hold about 7 things. That's actually why the phone numbers traditionally are 7 numbers, because that's how many we can remember. Fun little fact for you. So we want to think, I don't want to be, have my anxiety too high, because then I can only really think about 2 or 3 things. But I do want to have it low enough where I can think about 7 things. Okay, so that's how we're our attention is kind of connecting with how excited we are, how much anxiety we're experiencing. And I'm going to talk lots about cues. So I talk about, internal cues, which are, your thoughts, emotions, things that you experience. And I'm going to talk about external cues as well. So what are the things that you're noticing around you, the things that you're sensing around you as well. And this is, I think, what really, this is the difficulty, is we tend to loop. We might ruminate, or we kind of get stuck in this anxiousness feeling, and we don't have an exit. We don't know how to kind of get out of this loop. Okay, so we might notice like one symptom, might get a little sweaty, I'm kind of nervous. Well, then the thoughts might come, well, that's because I think I'm going to fail in this experience, in this experience. Then it can just kind of cycle and become a bigger and bigger problem. So what we want to be able to do is notice that pattern and be able to stop and interject at different points. And that's my hope, is to give you a couple different strategies to help you interject with this loop. All right, let's dig into a bit of a process. So once we do notice, or we're going into an experience, here are a couple things I think that are helpful to focus on. So this is just like a general process for like managing emotions, managing behavior. So there's always, the mindfulness, the self-awareness. What's going on? Do I notice? Can I label this experience? So that's kind of why I think the stressed out Sam is helpful, because that's really what that section is about. And I think it's important, what it's like for you, because each person is definitely different. And being able to trace it back a little bit. Like, what is the thing that's making me nervous? For some people, it could be, I don't know, like a yellow car, just because they have a memory of a yellow car and it was like super stressful for them or something. Whereas other people, it might be the music, or it might be, I'm feeling a little bit sweaty and now I'm getting really insecure about it. So it's important to know, what are the triggers? What are those cues that are kind of creating that anxiety? And then diagnose, assess the source of it. So what patterns do you know about? What triggers do you know about? What's your attention been on recently? What have you been focused on? What have you been navigating? And I like that last question. What's important right now? Because ultimately it's a threat, right? Like, that's where anxiety is there's something that's a threat. There's something that could go wrong right now. There's something that's really important I need to pay attention to. So sometimes just labeling what it is and then engaging with that can be a really, really good strategy too. And then select your strategy. So I've got a bunch of different things I'm gonna throw at you, kind of like throwing a bunch of darts at the wall, hoping a couple of them hit the board for you. And even thinking, which ones have worked the best in the past. Some of these things do take a little bit of practice and time to kind of get good at, and to kind of embed within your persona and within your kind of habits, but they are definitely all scientifically proven, and definitely with time can help you. Okay, developing mindfulness and self-awareness. Not going to dig into this too much because we talked about it with stressed out Sam. But I tend to think, so when I think about one singular moment, if you were to freeze frame one specific moment, it's going to be filled up with 3 different types of cues. So all experience is made up of physical sensations, cognitive thoughts, images, beliefs, and then your emotional experience. So it could be mood, feelings, but it's more something that's, once again, the molasses, right? It's a little bit of a different currency. But those are kind of the 3 things I think that make up every single moment. They all seem like one big moment, right? Like these are all interrelated and all interconnected and jumbled together. but they're all very, very much separate at the same time. And it's our interpretation and relationship with this information that helps us to decide how to behave. Okay, so something in here told us it's important, and that's where the anxiety is coming from. So how we interpret that cue is pretty important. If you want to develop a little bit of further awareness, so take a little bit of time. This is an activity I do lots with folks within the performance enhancement industry, whether it's a team, whether it's a specific player or performer, doing a bit of a, what does your worst performance look like? What does your best performance look like? So let's say you're going into this interview. What does it look like when you bomb? How do you sound? What are you talking about? What's your presence like? How does your body feel? What are you thinking about? Great. Now let's say you're crushing, your best day ever, right? Everything goes exactly how you want it to. It's this ultimate image of best case scenario. That's going to tell you what's the difference between the two, and that's going to help you to focus on the keys to success. It's literally going to reveal what are the essentials for me that's going to really help me to succeed, and how can I control those things, and how can I influence those things. So this is really, really helpful for almost like self-diagnosing. What's my keys to success? Okay, so diagnose and assess the source of anxiety. So in here I've got a bunch of, these are common concepts, perspectives, frames of mind, just to consider when you're looking at your experience. So there are a couple different ways that you can kind of play with this information that can be really helpful. Toss me a thumbs up if you've heard of growth mindset or Carol Dweck. It's pretty popular. Okay, a bunch of us. Yeah, awesome. So she talks lots about growth mindset and the difference between what a fixed mindset is and a growth mindset, and how that actually impacts your ability to complete something, perform a task, right? So really, I think the growth mindset, the key is that you're open to new things, new ideas, you're open to challenges, you even embrace the challenges, you bring them on, you seek them out. You see your effort as a path to mastery. It's not just something inherently you can do, right? So you're not just, I'm a good leader and that's how it is. It's more, you know what, I'm struggling with it as being a leader right now, but I'm going to get good at it. I'm going to develop it. So you kind of are really invested in the process, and you believe in the process, not a static, kind of stuck idea. And then when you do make mistakes, you're focused on the opportunity to learn, opportunity to develop as well. Another thing I talk about lots, and this relates also to growth mindset, is focusing on the process, not the outcome. There was I think people still say it. There's a professional basketball player who talked lots about trusting the process, Joel Embiid. And that's something I say all the time. Trust the process. It's not about the outcome, it's about how you achieve it. Focusing on the outcome can be a little bit debilitating because we're not talking about how we're achieving it. We're just focusing on the positive experience of success or the negative experience of failure. We're not focused on the process of that happening. So when you focus on the process, that tends to lead to a lot better results. And that's kind of what that quote's talking about there. So those focused on the process of an activity would later perceive themselves to be more in control and display greater confidence in their ability to solve that problem, whatever it may be, instead of those who are only focused on the outcome. So, thinking about your own thoughts and what you're kind of going through when you're anxious, what are you focused on? Are you focused on that outcome? Or are you going to be focused on, what's my process for success? Have I thought about the stories I've prepared, the questions I want to ask, how I'm going to navigate that first question they ask, how I'm going to walk into the room, the posture, all these other things. Are we focused on those things, or are we focused on that outcome? The outcome can hijack kind of our thinking. Are we being task-oriented or ego-oriented? So this kind of really just reinforces what I'm talking about. And this is kind of just more so comparing ourselves to other people. We want to compare ourselves to ourselves over time, not comparing ourselves to what everybody else is doing. Easier said than done, though. I know we tend to compare ourselves to others. But when it comes to, you're in an anxious moment and you're about to go on an interview, we probably want to get rid of some of those thoughts and really just focus on, the last time I interviewed, this happened. This time I'm going to make sure this happens. Building confidence, practice, practice, practice. That's that's really honestly one of the best ways to get your confidence. Practice telling your stories ahead of time, have somebody else listen to it, ask for feedback in what they hear in the story, get those reps in. Really, really important. Manage your growth expectations too. You know, are your expectations meeting where you're at currently? Or are you know, I got this expectation, I'm going to knock it out of the park, but I don't really know what that looks like and I don't know how to do that. I've never done it before, right? So maybe that's a little bit unrealistic. So just accepting where you're at today, how much experience you have, and really focusing on the learning opportunity. I'm going to do the best I can, and if I make mistakes, it's helpful for next time, right? I find, especially with interviews, there's a lot of gravity behind that moment. Like, this is my one chance to determine my life. Like, I think sometimes we build it up that much. So breaking that down a little bit, this is one of my interviews. I'm going to have interviews in the future. This is going to be really helpful for future interviews too. Helps to take some of the gravity out. Control the controllables. I'll talk about that a little bit more. That's one of my favorite strategies. Focus on the things you can control. Don't obsess about the things that are outside of your control. For example, you know, the employer selecting you. Sometimes when I go into an interview, I actually kind of say to myself, you know, I've prepared. I'm feeling confident. I know I can do this interview. I can do this job. So the one thing I can't control is their decision to understand the value or to select my value for this position. So you know what, they just gotta be smart enough to know that I'm awesome. Right? So completely, I can't control that. I got no say in that, and that's on them. I'm not taking responsibility for that. So that's kind of a little bit of controlling the controllables. Okay, so working with thoughts and beliefs. So two kind of major pools of thinking when it comes to our thoughts or cognitions is there are a couple different theories or theoretical approaches to them where it's about controlling or challenging these thoughts. So that's more like cognitive behavior therapy and other ones. I won't go into the specifics, but what you're trying to do is like check in with them. So, you know, is there a deeper belief that this automatic thought is kind of exemplifying? Does it make sense? Is it true? Is it not really logical? And that's kind of with the irrational thoughts too. You know, sometimes we tell ourselves things because it feels true, but when we look at the actual objective information, it's not true, right? I think sometimes we tend to be a little bit harder on ourselves, and we have to ask a friend, you know, what went well there? And they point out all these different details that you noticed, but you didn't really factor in. So sometimes checking with the objective information and your subjective interpretation of it can be really, really helpful too. So that's controlling or challenging your thoughts. The other is to kind of just let them pass through. Okay, so instead of trying to change them or control them, it's just that's happening. That's something I'm experiencing. Here's what I'm going to kind of focus on, or here's how I'm going to engage with that. So you have a little bit of a metaphor of, you know, a dog sitting in a front window of a house and just watching all the cars go by. Right? There might be certain cars that it barks at, like the mailman or the garbage truck or something gets really, really fired up at those ones, and other ones that just go by quietly. Right? So it's important to know what are those cars that we're barking at or that make us bark, and what are the ones that are easy to kind of pass through. And then the ones that, you know, are powerful, they do have some gravity with them. There is a way to actually engage with them to take some of the gravity out. So sometimes, you know, I really can't make a mistake, or I really can't fail this interview. That can be a really, really big, powerful feeling or thought. So how do we engage with it and take some of that power out? I've got a couple strategies we'll talk about. And then just physical factors. So this is kind of coming back to Sam a little bit, but what's your breathing like? How fast are you breathing? That can directly impact the experience of anxiety. There's actually a breathing technique you can do that puts you like into a state of panic and puts so much adrenaline in your body that you could be laying down doing this breathing technique, but you've got more adrenaline in your body than somebody who's skydiving for the first time. So our breathing is super powerful. Are we doing it through our nose, through our mouth? How long are our breaths? How shallow are they? That's actually one thing that's really common in our society is people don't know how to breathe properly. We have really small, shallow breaths, but it's the long ones that give us more oxygen that actually help our brain think better. And when we're exercising, it comes out, but we tend to be a little bit more, sedentary in our work. So I think that's oftentimes why. And then posture. I talked a little bit earlier about where do you hold tension, and maybe you should just relax up those muscles or focus on them. Mine's in my shoulders, between my shoulder blades. So I will be really intentional to stretch out and move those things. And then I've got like shoulders, chin, spine, because I think, your spine tends to be how straight is it when you're anxious, and where does it maybe lean? Where does it maybe tense up? Is it curved? What does it look like? Almost like if you were to pull a string from the top of your head, that's like really good posture, right? So when you're anxious, where do you deviate from that? All right, let's dig into a couple different strategies here. So I got some physical ones, some cognitive ones, and some emotional ones. You might want to use a couple of them. Some of them might be, your trusty, reliable ones, and other ones might be ones you're developing just to add to your toolkit. But I think the more of these you have, the better you're going to be in control of yourself and not necessarily have anxiety hijack your ability to do well. So physical things, deep breathing, connect with your breathing, yoga walks, exercise. I think that's oftentimes when we're anxious, we move around or we get jittery because we've got too much energy and it needs to go somewhere. So is there a way you can direct that energy physically that isn't going to distract or hinder your performance? For example, if you're doing a video interview, my feet have been moving this whole time and nobody knows. Right? So that's a safe way for me to kind of express that without it hijacking my performance. Watch your diet, your nutrition. Give yourself a little bit of time before you eat and you actually go into it, just because eating sometimes makes us a little bit tired. Make sure you eat some veggies, some fruit. Get a good night's rest. Sleep is probably the most valuable currency you'll ever have. Sleep is huge just for in health and performance. Hands up if you've heard of box breathing before. Some of us? Okay, cool. Yeah, this tends to be one of the staples of mindfulness and meditation. So 4 counts in, hold it for 4, 4 count out, hold it for 4. And that's a way to very intentionally engage with your physical body, your physical experience, and have a very tangible impact. Give it about 90 seconds, about 2 minutes, and you can come down from a panic attack to back to normal. So this is really, really proven and really, really helpful. I would probably say this is your bread and butter. When you're like super overwhelmed, this would be my first suggestion. And focusing on the heart too. Getting out of your cognitive experience and just focusing on your breathing and your sensations in your body. You might want to challenge some of your thinking. Is there really evidence to back up the thought I have or the belief I have? Am I making thinking errors? Am I thinking in extremes? Black and white, all or nothings? Am I catastrophizing or exaggerating? Am I balancing out the positives with the negatives? Or am I super focused on the negatives, past experiences or current experience? Expectations, yeah. I'm going to give you folks the slides too, so you have them for future if you like. You might want to reframe your thinking. So once you feel a bit of, or you notice a little bit of a flaw, there might be a direction to take it, right? There's always a purpose behind that fear. So what direction, how does it fit within your current context? Can you contextualize it so that it doesn't hijack, but you can kind of put it in the corner. Thank you for that message. I'm going to go this direction. Yeah. Our relationship with failures or mistakes. I like the word mistakes a lot better than failures. The only failure is being unwilling to make a mistake. I just came up with that on the spot. That's a poster right there.
That is a plaque, Josh, on your door is what it is.
Yes, chase those mistakes. Make good mistakes. I talk about good mistakes lots. Yeah, I won't go into a tangent.
We can though, honestly though, Josh, because I just want to reemphasize that is a key teaching that we have at the Institute. Fail fast and fail hard. Learn that this is the space that you have to make mistakes, and you are surrounded by multiple supports to make sure that your failures are not hard and that you can pick yourself up afterwards. But that, yeah, I love this. Check in on your relationships with making failures, making mistakes, making oops at the end of the day, whatever you want to call it, right? Because they are absolutely roadmaps to how you can have success in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, they are an essential ingredient for learning. There's something called the zone of optimal functioning, or no, actually, sorry, that's one of them, but a different one is called zone of proximal development. And what it talks about is there is a point, and I think oftentimes it's helpful to think about like a mentor-mentee relationship, but there is a point where you are performing a task and you get to a point or a problem where you can't navigate it. You don't know how to deal with it. You don't know how to solve it. That's good. That's a chance for you to develop something. But oftentimes, in order for us to do that successfully, we need help from somebody outside. So that's where a mentor gives us a little bit of guidance or a little bit of feedback. And I think that's the mistake space. You want to go into the spot where I have to make a mistake because I don't know. That's how you learn, right? So I think it's really important to chase mistakes almost. Chase those spaces where you don't know how to do something. And if you can avoid a mistake and have somebody help you, that's great. But if it's on you and you just got to deal with it and navigate it, go for it, because you got a little bit of feedback from other people helping you along the way. So yeah, love talking about good mistakes. A couple other things. So this is kind of the going back to the dog at the window with the acceptance commitment training. It's becoming really, really popular and more common. But it's kind of, you know, when you're having thoughts, watching them happen, experience them, and let them kind of pass through. So instead of trying to like stop it or control it or push it out, just let it move through. Oftentimes it's related to something we've experienced in the past. It's just you know, a habit we have to think that thing at that time, and just redirect your attention back to what you want to focus on. Could be your preparation, could be music, could be your breathing, whatever it may be. But I think it's just your relationship with those automatic thoughts when they come up. Make a list of what's controllable, what's not controllable in that moment. So before you go into the interview, what are things that you can do? You could probably go to the bathroom, do a couple power poses, focus on your breathing, mantras, thoughts, lots of different things. So making a list, and then that also helps you to, well, I can't control these things, so I don't have to focus on them. I don't have to think about them. That can free up a lot of space.
I'm super interested, and I'm going to jump in here. Josh, what's a power pose? How do I make my power pose?
How does Superman or Superwoman stand? Or like walk? Even if you're like a Goliath Olympic champion walking around. Yeah, Mark's got it. Mark's crushed. Oh yeah, that was awesome, Mark. That was the best. One of the best power poses I've ever seen. Yeah.
Every power pose is the best power pose.
I hope we're all behind the scenes practicing our power poses where nobody can see us actually doing it while this presentation is going on, but that's awesome.
There's actual like evidence that apparently if you like really spread yourself out for like 15 minutes, like it starts generating certain endorphins in your body. And then so like about 15-20 minutes before you're giving a talk or something, start doing that power pose and hold it. And basically you're like, because the default, I guess, is your body like to kind of shrink down, and you're fighting against that. And then, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Something my sister always talked about, she was a dramatic arts major. She talked about actors and actresses when they were crying and they had to like turn it off, they would just start smiling. So you could be miserable and just fake a smile, and your mood will change around that behavior. So you will actually like stop crying and become happier. It's this really weird thing, but our like biology has crazy impact on our internal experience too. Yeah, so develop a mantra. You might have a little short statement you want to remind yourself or reaffirm to yourself over time, or even just self-affirmations. I'm going to do the best I can today, whatever that statement is that help you stay grounded. Keep a positive attitude. And then just staying present. I think sometimes we can get hijacked by the past or the future, and we're really stuck in the past or really stuck in the future. Sometimes a bit of a reset is, name 5 things in the room, 5 sounds you hear, and 5 thoughts you have, or 5 sensations you're experiencing. And that's just a way to really check in with yourself and really just become present. Listen to music if you can, that's a big one. Leverage your imagination. I would say your imagination is the most powerful thing that you have control over. So my number one suggestion for people who are nervous for interviews is actually a bit of a sensation. So I like to picture a clock. You can probably hear it in the background. Click, click, click. But then imagine that clock goes in, once again, molasses or like water or something, and it starts clicking a lot slower. Even as I'm doing it, you can feel yourself kind of coming down a little bit, right? So it's imagery, and you're imagining something, but it's a sensation that you're causing for yourself, just to slow down your thinking so you're not hijacking your thought as much. Past successes, so past memories that were good, where you did well, and even just core memories. Yesterday I was thinking about, I was listening to old music. What was I listening to? Stand By Me or something, like something from the 70s. I like jumped all the way back into being a kid in the truck with my dad and my sister, just screaming out the lyrics. And I was super happy, super positive. I'm like, you know what? This is a core memory. I could definitely leverage this in the future. If I'm feeling a little bit off, I can come back to this moment, let it fill me up, and really just have it capture kind of my mood and take that with me forward. So that's another way to just access your own internal experiences for the value. Okay, these are my last 2. Diffusing, one of my favorite new strategies, and this is taking the power or the gravity out of a thought or a belief. So there's a couple different strategies here, and these are to help make things external and to detach from it. So diffuse from it, it's called. So one, just state it out loud. I am having the thought that I might make a mistake today, whatever it might be. So in just saying it out loud, I am having the thought that this is happening. That step moves it from in here to out here. It can be pretty powerful. Another way, sing your thoughts. Sing it in a quirky way. So think about it as being sung at an opera or at a rap concert or whatever it is. But sing it, play with it, change it around. Say it in a silly voice, like, nah, 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 nah. I'm doing really bad. Right? It takes the power out, takes the gravity out. Some people, it's helpful to imagine on a computer screen. So what does it look like typed out? Change the colors, change the font, make it like drawn out like a kid, I don't know, graphic artist, but play with the content on a screen somewhere. That's another way to externalize it, mess with it. And the last one they sometimes talk about, and this is from The Confidence Gap, which is a book by Russ Harris. Highly, highly recommend, really, really good read. But he talks about using your hands as a metaphor for your thoughts. When they're up here, that's all you can see. When they're really, really close to us, right? But if we slowly let it back away, they start feeling less powerful, and you can look at other things, right? So even like putting those words on your hand and watching them fall away is a bit of a metaphor. And then the last one is arguably my favorite meditative practice, and it connects with gratitude work. It's called heart focused breathing, or the quick coherence technique. And I'll send you the link if you're interested. But what it really is one, first step is connecting with your heartbeat, how fast it's going, how it's moving. Second step is your breathing. So it's not box breathing, it's a little different. It's slow, long breaths. And I find that 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out tends to be best, because then we just sink into a deeper rhythm, deeper, longer rhythm. And once that kind of disappears, you settle into it, connecting with your heart, you're thinking about that. Then we transition to focusing on things with appreciation. And there's some crazy awesome science about how your brain and your heart communicate with each other. And this is specifically engaging with the positive experiences that are fulfilling for you. So what are things you appreciate? What are things you're grateful for? Do you have specific moments with people that just really, really fill you up? And you can actually train this. So you can, this is like the flow. Lots it happen. People talk about it lots in sports and stuff where someone is just like perfectly performing for an hour just because they're stuck in the flow. So this is something that literally cultivates that. I've got this link. I'll toss it in the chat for you. And what it is a short little 2-3 minute video that just shows you how to do it and what it's like. And they actually have some really, really cool science and biofeedback devices for it. You don't need them, but I have one and I've played with it before, and it's super, super cool. It's a thing. Just because of time, I was gonna actually run you through it, but just because of time, I'm gonna pass on that and give it to you for homework. You can take that with you. So what did Lisa do? She met with a career counselor, talked about her interview experiences, set up keys to her success, practiced some of those things, challenged, looked at some of her negative thoughts, came up with some approaches to navigate them. And then she was in much more control for her next interview. Her anxiety wasn't in the front seat, she was in the front seat. So I do have a handout I put together as well. I'll put it in the chat. It's got a list of all of these things on the second page. I will pass that along to you. And that's just about everything I got. Have some patience with yourself. It does take time to develop strategies and develop a relationship with these emotions too. And just really, I think it's trusting that experience is going to teach you. Experience is the ultimate teacher. Another thing I should put on a plaque. So just really trust that your experiences will guide you along the way. See what works, see what doesn't.